Hello YouTube. Today I want to talk again about the Dyatlov Pass mysteries. And let me start briefly by a quick reminder about the case. In the winter of 1959, 9 hikers, skiers, who went on a hike under the leadership of Igor Dyatlov disappeared in the mountains of the northern Urals, USSR. A month later, rescuers found their tent cut open, and within a radius of 1.5 kilometers from it, they found 5 frozen bodies. The bodies of the others were found only in May. Almost all of the hikers were barefoot and half-dressed. Some had fatal injuries. It is still not solved why the young people ran away in the bitter cold and to their doom. The tragedy that occurred more than 60 years ago, the Dyatlov Pass, it continues to be on the mind of the Russians. Let's put it this way. Special correspondents of the Komsomolskaya Pravda newspaper, well-known Russian investigative reporters Nikolai and Natalia Varsegov, have been pursuing clues in the Dyatlov Pass story for years. In December of 2020, they announced that in the course of their investigation of the tragedy at the Dyatlov Pass, another mystery has emerged. This is about the participation of the military, Soviet military, in the search for missing hikers. Almost all civilian rescuers are known to the Varsegovs. Many actively cooperated with the reporters, but as for the military, this is something else. Well, the military rescuers to whom the Varsegovs called more than once, offering them or their loved ones to share memories of the time, well, not a single person from the military side responded for some reason. So doubts began to torment them. I mean, whether there were any military. Well, but the military is mentioned in the Dyatlov Pass criminal case. For example, in the report of the Moscow sports experts, it stated, later arrived a group of cadets of the Sergeant School of Ivdel Lag or Ivdel Camp under the leadership of Senior Lieutenant Potapov, 10 people, a group of sappers or combat engineers with mine detectors under the leadership of Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov, 7 people. Well, Ivdel is a town in the Sverdlovsk Oblast or region in Russia, located on the Ivdel River. During the Stalin's regime, Ivdel was home to Ivdel Lag Gulag, a Soviet concentration camp for criminals and political enemies of the Soviet Socialist state. Like other gulags across the Soviet Union, it was abolished in 1956 after the so-called Khrushchev thaw, but remained a prison site for criminals. Another mention about the military was found in radio messages, and it said, in addition to 2 military groups, Chernyshov and Shestopalov, a civil one is organized. Mine detectors do not give anything to the the lieutenant colonel immediately switched to dipsticks. Shestopalov's group passed a section of Cedar area 300 by 20 meters. For a long time, the Varsegovs could not understand from which military unit Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov, Senior Lieutenant Avenburg, and sappers were sent to the Dyatlov Pass. The fact that the Ivdel Lag guards, under the command of Chernyshov, took part in the search is not surprising. They served near the scene of the tragedy. But where did these sappers, these combat engineers come from? And also why? Yes, and the lieutenant colonel with them. It would be enough to send the senior lieutenant as a platoon commander. But why send the lieutenant colonel? In the late 1950s, a railway was being built near Ivdel. The main work was carried out by servicemen of the 5th Separate Railway Poznan Red Banner Brigade, Military Unit 01663. the brigade headquarters was located in Serov. The Varsegovs assumed that the Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov could have served in it, and they were right. The archive of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation managed to find the documents of that brigade. According to the personnel records, Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov Mikhail Fedorovich served in it from June 1950 to February of 1960. After that, he was transferred to Moscow, where he lived near the Frunzinskaya subway station until his death. So that was one of the highlights of his career, being around the Dyatlov Pass investigation. In the log of orders for 1959, it appears that on January 2 of that year, Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov was appointed a military investigator of the brigade management headquarters. A person in that position was obliged to investigate all military emergencies related to the immediate unit itself, from the lack of basic footwear in the warehouse to the leakage of military secrets. So this was a military emergency, and here is what flabbergasted me, stunned and amazed me to no end. This Dyatlov Pass case is becoming more bizarre, uncanny, weirder every time. No one has discussed so far what I'm going to tell you now. The future cosmonaut of the USSR number 50 and cosmonaut of the world number 100, hero of Salute 7, Viktor Savinikh, in 1960 built a railway in the northern Urals, serving in the 5th Brigade. You see, in 1959, he was drafted into the Soviet Army. First, he served in a training unit in Sverdlovsk, and then transferred to the Ivdel area. Why him? Why? Those who read my books know that he was involved as a cosmonaut in some of the most notorious UFO sightings in outer space. He's also author of a very curious book about space exploration. There are only a few copies left in the world, and of course it was published in the USSR. Let me talk about him later and his sightings. What is a connection, if any, or is it just a coincidence that Savinikh has a connection to the case, and did he reveal everything while speaking to the Varsegovs? Well, the reporters, Varsegovs, most likely do not know about the outer space UFO experience of Savinikh, but they did have his phone number and called him about the Dyatlov Pass. And he told them the following: the cosmonaut doesn't remember Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov because in February of 1960 the investigator, or doznatel in Russian, was transferred to Moscow. But he well remembers Lieutenant Colonel Tatar Vladimir Ivanovich, the same age and the colleague of Shestopalov. As for the investigators of the brigade, he and his comrades did not know them by sight. That's what Viktor Savinikh told the reporters. This information was not disclosed to the privates or soldiers. The investigators were appointed in secret from the personnel. So they asked him, did you know then that the officers of the 5th Brigade participated in the search for the missing Dyatlov group? No, he replied. Surprisingly, they didn't talk about this story at all in those days. Savinikh heard about it, the Dyatlov Pass tragedy, much later, from the TV. The reporters Varsegovs went on. Indeed, it is only surprising that in a military unit located in the wilderness, where every minor incident, like a drunken visit of a captain to the commandant's office, is long discussed by everyone, the tragedy on the Dyatlov Pass somehow was managed to be concealed. But why? But the reporters also want to find out how the Soviet military became involved in the investigation. So let's look at the chronology. because we're dealing in this video, I want to bring up definitely presence of the military, which is surprisingly we want to know why, and of course the cosmonaut, the future cosmonaut. Anyway, here is the chronology. On March 1st, 1959, a radiogram is sent from the Dyatlov Pass search headquarters to the civilian head of the search, Maslenikov. There is a proposal to send you sappers with mine detectors. Let us know your opinion. And it's signed Solomon Zaostrovsky. On the 2nd of March, an order appears in the personnel order log of the 5th Railway Brigade. The following officers are considered to have departed on a business trip. Now, I will not list you all the names but one. And this name was in that log. Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov, MF, to Ivdel from March 3 to March 15, 1959. So Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov, along with 6 other officers, leaves Serov for Ivdel. It is not known whether all 6 people went to the Dyatlov Pass. These names are not mentioned in the criminal case or in other documents about this tragedy, but on the 3rd of March, a radio message was sent from the pass from the Dyatlov Pass to the headquarters to Solomon. A group of sappers arrived. 8 people safely reached the camp. Signed Chernyshov and Nivolin. Military, well, on the 5th of March, another radio message. And here's what it says. Yesterday, Shestopalov's group passed the Cedar section 300 by 120 meters. Today, the detachment worked especially hard, passed 500 meters with a width of 250 to 150 meters. On the half of the section between Kolmogorova and Dyatlov, the 5th corpse was found under a layer of snow 15 centimeters. This is Rustem Slobodin, dressed warmly, on his head ski cap, wearing a black paper sweater, pants, long johns, 3 pairs of socks, on one leg black felt boot. In the diaries of the head of the search of the expedition was Evgeny Maslenikov. There are these entries. March 5. Senior Lieutenant Avenburg will lead a group of sappers. Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov must be returned or sent back is the more correct meaning translating from Russian. March 6. Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov can return tomorrow with a helicopter, but Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov returned to the headquarters only on March 13, and on March 18 he arrived from Serov to Ivdel again, and then he returns to headquarters on March 23. March 31 again, the order of business trip. Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov, MF, to the city of Ivdel from March 31 to April 30. So this Lieutenant Colonel visited Ivdel very often, and this time he went, the last one, for a whole month. Was the reason for this month-long business trip an alarming radio message from Senior Lieutenant Avenburg from the Dyatlov Pass on March 31, 1959, 9:30 a.m. Listen to this carefully, my audience. Here's what the message said. March 31, 04 hours. The day Mesheryakov noticed in the southeast direction a large ring of fire, which moved towards us for 20 minutes, then disappeared behind the height 880. Before disappearing over the horizon, a star appeared from the center of the ring, which gradually increased to the size of the moon, began to fall down, separating from the ring. The unusual phenomenon was observed by all the personnel who were alerted. We ask you to explain this phenomenon and its safety, as in our condition it makes an alarming impression. Was Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov sent as an investigator to study this phenomenon and explain its nature to the personnel? Unfortunately, reports on any business trips are not available to ordinary people and are kept in the secret service of the Russian state. Therefore, we do not know anything about the results of that trip. But if we assume that the Ring of Fire is the trace of a rocket, then on March 31, 1959, an R-7 rocket was launched from Baikonur to the Kura test site in Kamchatka. According to the Ministry of Defense, the launch was regular. The range was more than 6,300 kilometers. We don't know the exact time of the launch, but we do know that it was mostly early in the morning, okay? But if we assume that it was not the Ring of Fire, a trace of a rocket, then what was it? So, was it a rocket launch? Now, let's look at the sappers on combat engineers with their dipsticks. In the list of personnel of the 5th Railway Brigade Military Unit 01662, the Varsegovs did not find Senior Lieutenant Avenburg, but other military units were also subordinate to it. So 31962, 12664, 24594. Varsegov had to dig through a lot of documents before they found this phrase in the Book of Orders for personnel in the military unit 24594, which was located in Serov. On the night of January 6, 1959, he will appoint Senior Lieutenant Avenburg as duty officer for the battalion. From the diary of Evgeny Maslenikov, it is known that Avenburg arrived at the pass together with 6 servicemen. The dates of business trips of Senior Lieutenant Avenburg and his subordinates coincide with the trips of Lieutenant Colonel Shestopalov, which means that the latter personally supervised their participation in the search for Igor Dyatlov's group. So here's the order of March 2. We believe that Senior Lieutenant Avenburg left on a business trip to the city of Evdel from March 2 to March 7, 1959. The basis is the order of the commander in military unit 24594. Note that the basis of the orders for Savelyev sappers is an order from the headquarters of the 5th Railway Brigade, military unit 0162, as a requirement from the higher command unit to send sappers to the pass. Isn't that where the main directive to finding the Dyatlov hikers come from? On March 7, the mission of the sappers is extended until March 13. Probably they found something. I will leave further data of the operation, such as personnel and the dates. Suffice it to say that in the order of May 15, based on the report of Senior Lieutenant Starikovsky, it states, write off the spent ammunition and signal cartridges in the search for dead students, 7.62 millimeter pistol cartridges 45 pieces, 26 millimeter green smoke signal cartridges 5 pieces, 26 millimeter red smoke signal cartridges 5 pieces. According to the Varsegovs, it's too early to put an end to the participation of the military in the case of Igor Dyatlov's group investigation. Today, these are all archival documents from the Central Archive of the Ministry of Defense concerning the search for the hikers. Unfortunately, many files of the Ural Military District from those times are classified, and from those that are in the public domain, this is still the maximum information available, what we tell you. Although it is possible that we might have missed something, that's the Varsegov saying that. Nevertheless, we will continue to work in this direction and ask for your help, and they're appealing to the family of the former soldiers there, military. Below we publish the names of the military personnel who may have known something about the tragedy at the pass, as well as a list of all the sappers from the search. So the Varsegovs, they'll keep on looking. They're trying to find information going around classified archives and concealed data. I want to share some of the comments of those interested in this most complicated test. Here is one, and he's responding to the information that the Varsegovs presented. Your train of thought is correct. The budget of the Ministry of Defense budget, this is the government spending. To go beyond the budget and allocate money for rescue with the use of aviation, helicopters, military experts, soldiers, requires important justifications and orders at the highest level. The unit of sappers on the Dyatlov Pass, the profession does not provide for the search for missing people. So why were they sent there? Here's another comment, and it says, but those soldiers who were born from 1912 to 1923 died long ago, and it is unlikely that they told their teenage children anything. It is still a mystery why many witnesses were given non-disclosure notes, papers to sign, as if it were a very secret matter. One more comment. Now, this is talking about the area. Most likely, there are preserved military facilities, and so that there would be no curious people, everything is hushed up. How much can you grind and grind, meaning study the same events over and over? I found the following comment to be very interesting. Apparently, the case could not be unclassified. This explains the presence of the regional prosecutor at the autopsy and the decree of the deputy prosecutor of the Russian Federation, Urakov, not to show his face to anyone. Those particularly involved in the investigation were promoted. According to new information, it is found that the scope of search operations in the Cedar Tree area was quite extensive. Surprisingly, the four in the ravine were literally under their noses, he means the bodies. If in May, with the help of a dipstick, Dubinina's body was found at a considerable depth, then why could not this be done in February or March? Absurd. Here are two comments pertaining to missiles. One of the rocket fuel gradients was nitric acid. It is a powerful oxidizer, and for all living things it is deadly. Something fell near the tent. The remnants of a rocket fuel poisoned everything around it. And here's the other observation. Maybe it's the rocket fuel components. They're secret. A cloud of rocket fuel covered the tent, making it hard and scary to breathe. The group went to the lowlands where the air is cleaner. Then the wind blew the clouds away. They decided to wait at the cedar. Four went to make a shelter and fell on each other. Because of the depth of the fall area could not call for help, and they couldn't, so they froze to death. The others waited as long as they could, decided to return to the tent. 3 left. 2 remained by the fire to wait, froze to death. 3 did not reach the tent. They were frozen. The poisoning that the hikers received could indirectly divulge to the public about the composition of the fuel. Therefore, tissue samples from the bodies were sent for examination to Moscow, and there they were also classified. The autopsy data was covered up to explain the death as freezing, or from freezing. And finally, here's what some Russians feel about the Dyatlov Pass case. You already got to us with this pass. No one will ever know what was there except the KGB, and they will not tell. And stop mucking about in a void. Look, but I understand the Russian investigators like the Varsegovs. I have been investigating this case for years too, and I was one of the first in the West to bring forth this information, and back in 1998. Look, this is comparable, really. No, there's no comparable case in the history of paranormal Russia. Although there have been other strange deaths of hikers, and I have mentioned some. Well, new strange facts and connections become apparent from time to time, like the close attention the Soviet military paid to the Dyatlov Pass case, and that lieutenant colonel who kept revisiting the site, like the cosmonaut Viktor Savinych. Maybe his adventures in the outer space had nothing to do with his service in the Urals, about the same time as the Dyatlov Pass tragedy. Who knows? And here is briefly what happened in outer space. Soyuz T-4 Soviet spaceship was launched into orbit on March 12, 1981. Vladimir Vasilievich Kovalyonok, commander, and Viktor Petrovich Savinych, flight engineer, they piloted it. On March 13, 1991, the spaceship successfully docked with Salyut 6. Salyut 6 was the second generation of space platforms built by the Soviets, launched on September 29, 1977. The first crew of the cosmonauts went aboard Salyut 6 in December 1977, and the final crew departed in May of 1981. Several strange incidents had been reported aboard the Salyut 6 different years, like 1978, but by far the strangest one took place during the fifth expedition, piloted by Kovalyonok and Savinych. Professor Lazarev designed the expedition's programs for scientific research. The watch crew of Kovalyonok and Savinych was given the special task to confirm unusual findings brought back by the watch crews of the second, third, and fourth expeditions. The silvery clouds annoyed Soviet scientists. This much is admitted in a book written by Professor Lazarev, Kovalyonok, and Avakyan, a Soviet astrophysicist. Исследование Земли с пилотируемых космических кораблей, or Study of Earth from Manned Spaceships, published in Leningrad in 1987. You cannot find many copies of this book, or a few copies. Anyway, what is indeed very strange, all information of the research aboard Salyut 6 from May 14 to 18 is missing from the account of the book. The last entry states that on May 3, 1981, the crew observed a ray-like structure to the southwest of Australia. In 1990, there was an account published in the Days of Glasnost Policies in a Soviet newspaper, and it was about the conversation between the crews of Salyut 6 and Soyuz 4 on May 5, 1981. Kovalyonok reported seeing an explosion from outer space, a brightly burning sphere moving perpendicularly to the ship, elongated like a melon, and then exploded twice in its frontal section and in the rear section. The location was somewhere in the area of Cape Town, South Africa. But the strangest events took place later. Allegedly from May 14 to May 18, 1981, the two cosmonauts had observed a UFO, and more. It's a fascinating story, and I've presented all information available to me in my books about Soviet ufology. There is a connection to the Dyatlov Pass, in my opinion, and Savinych may be just one of the mysterious coincidences. We don't know about the others yet. So I thank you for watching my videos. Please subscribe, please tell others, please like them, and if you can support my research, there are links in the description to this video on how to do so. Stay tuned for more videos about paranormal Russia and Eurasia. Thank you.